So I think I briefly mentioned with you guys the other day, the all students take courses or all students take calculus. Does this ring a bell at all? Do you remember me labeling the quadrants? So let's talk about what that means, okay? So this little acronym tells us what is positive in what quadrant. In the first quadrant, all the trig functions are positive. In the second quadrant, only sine is positive. And when I say only sine, I'm also referring to its reciprocal function. Okay, so sine and its reciprocal. In the third quadrant, only tangent and its reciprocal are positive, okay? And then in the fourth quadrant, only cosine and its reciprocal are positive. Now, until you get the hang of this procedure, this lesson, you are going to be referencing older lessons in this packet to get the exact value. So I'll talk a little bit about what I mean by that. The positive and negative sign of a trigonometric function and its reciprocal function is determined by the quadrant in which the terminal side of theta lies. So, quadrant 1, all positive. All are positive. In quadrant 2, like I said, sine and cosecant are positive. Quadrant 3, tan and cotan are positive. And quadrant 4, cosine and secant, which is its reciprocal, is positive. And when those are positive, the others must be negative, okay? So given the following, determine which quadrant the terminal side of theta lies. So tan is greater than 0. Greater than 0 means positive or negative. If you're greater than 0, you're positive, right? You guys know that? Okay, it's easy stuff. So if tan is positive, what quadrant must it fall in? Quadrant 1 or quadrant 3. So all we know right here is that we can narrow it down to quadrant 1 or quadrant 3. Secant is less than 0. That means that secant is negative. So we know that secant is positive in the first and fourth. So secant must be negative in the second and third. So you get how you use like logic to determine it? Sine is positive. Where is sine positive?
In the first and second.
First and second. Cosine, when I do the two-parters, I do them in 2 steps. So cosine is negative. Cosine is negative in Q2 and Q3. Would you all agree with that? And cotan is positive. Cotan is positive where tan is positive, which is in the first and the third, right? So when you have an and, you're looking for what they have in common. So which quadrant must they be talking about? Q3, thank you. So the answer here is Q3. So do you understand how to use logic to figure each of these out? Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about reference angles. So you have done a little bit of this before, but these are the quadrant rules. So if your angle falls in the first quadrant, the reference angle is as it appears. Okay. If you fall in the second quadrant, to find your reference angle, if you're in degrees, 180 minus theta. If you're in radians, pi minus 180. Pi minus angle, same thing. If you're in the fourth quadrant, angle minus 180 or angle minus pi. And in the fourth quadrant, 360 minus angle. So that's one way to go about doing it. I'll explain. So let's go ahead and look at example A. We're going to draw our angle. So if my angle is 150, you always start here on the terminal side. You open up 90, and we open up a little more to get to 150. And then to draw my terminal side, I connect my origin out. So that angle I just opened up is a 150-degree angle. Now, logically, you don't have to use these rules. You can logic your way through this process as well. Okay, so if you know, the reference angle always is between the x-axis and the terminal side. You see that? That's the reference angle right there. Using logic, how could I figure out what this angle measure is?
Subtract it. Just what is 180 minus 150?
Yeah, it's got to be 180 minus 150, right? Because you see how this forms a straight line. So if this piece is 150, the rest must be whatever's left, okay? So that's going to be 30 degrees, okay? So we are going to do sine of 30 degrees.
She said she's out to make hero classes for the emphasis.
Fine. So we learned that sine of 30 degrees. If you don't remember the exact values, do you guys remember filling out that chart in 11.2? So I'm going to tell you what those are. That's what I'm referencing when I come up with these, by the way. Sine of 30 is just 1/2. Now, what quadrant did we fall in here? 2. So is sine positive here? Yes. So we don't have to make it negative. So that's how you do the procedure. All right, next one. Exactly. Yeah, we're going to definitely do an example where you have to make it negative. So on this one here, we have tan of 300. So 300, we start here. We go 90, 180, 270, and we go a little further to get to 300. So what quadrant have we landed in here? Quadrant 4. Okay, we're in Q4. And now we need to find our reference angle.
60.
Good. The reference angle is right here. So if we're in the 4th quadrant, the rule is 360 minus the angle, which is 60. So we have to find tan of 60. So these are what we call the exact values that we've already addressed. But let me show you what I mean by that. So real quick. Packet?
Yes. Wait.
That's the one.
Still number 2?
Yep. We're on 11.3. We're a second page in because we did half of it yesterday.
So is it negative now because it's in the 4th thing instead of the 3rd?
Very good. So I was just going to show you real quick how where I'm getting these exact values from on your notes from previous. Let me show you.
Wait, why does it go to
It's 10.3. It's going to say 10.3 on it.
Oh.
Where were the exact values? They were on, oh, here they are. So just so you understand like where I'm getting the exact values from, in your 11.1 notes, right here, you guys see this little chart right here, exact values? Okay, that's where I'm getting those from, okay? So if you're wondering where they're coming from, that's from, we've already done this. So I'm not just like pulling them from thin air, you guys, we've already done this whole bit. So, we know that tan of 60 is radical 3. So is it positive or negative here? Good, because it's in the 4th quadrant. So negative radical 3. Now we're going to do cotan. So we go here, 315. So we're in what quadrant? 4th quadrant, you do 360 minus angle measure. That gives me 45. So we're doing cotan of 45. So if you look at your chart from previous notes, cotan of 45 is 1. Is it going to be positive or negative 1? Well, it's
negative because
good, exactly. I got you, yeah. Secant of 240, we go here. What quadrant am I in? 3rd. What's the rule for the 3rd quadrant? I do angle minus, good. So I get secant of 60, right? So secant of 60, according to our chart, is 2. But is it going to be a negative or a positive 2? Good. Okay. So what's the problem with the rest of the questions we have today? They're in radians, so we need to convert them into, yes.
How do you know if it's negative or positive?
Oh, sure. So if we look back to this page right here, but it's based on what quadrant you land in.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
yeah, there's certain quadrants where certain things are negative and certain things are positive. Okay? That's okay. So we have to convert all of these into degrees, right? So do you guys remember the trick on how to convert from radians to degrees?
Multiply,
What were you going to say? Yes, that works too. Were you going to say that as well?
yeah.
That's true. But isn't there another way to do it a quicker way? So let me show you the trick. To convert to degrees, you simply have to replace pi with 180. Okay? If you convert and do that, replace pi with 180, you get 330 degrees. So that's going to land me in what quadrant? 330 lands me in guys, you can be able to determine one of the 4 quadrants, right? Which one is it?
The fourth one.
The 4th quadrant. Cosine is what in the 4th quadrant?
30.
Yeah, so it's 360 minus 330, which is 30, right? So cosine of 30 degrees. Cosine of 30 degrees is radical 3 over 2, according to our chart that we did the other day. And why is it positive here?
Because it's in the right quadrant.
Yes, it's in the right quadrant that we need. So cosecant, we can go ahead and convert it into degrees. $315. What quadrant is that? Good, so how do I find the reference angle? Good, which gives you 45, right? Cosecant of 45 is radical 2, but cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so is it positive or negative here? Negative. Alright, do you guys get the idea? Okay, so I want you guys to try G and H. I'll pause, and you guys try it out on your own, and then I'll put up the answer in a few. Did anybody get an answer for G? Any guesses? G is actually undefined. So let me explain why. If you look at your unit circle, so if I pull up your old notes here, let me see if I hit the print button, if it'll come up on a bigger screen. Hang on. There we go. That's a little better. So if I scroll down to the unit circle, right here, you see this? Let's look at where 90 is. 90 is right here. Everybody get to the point where you're doing 90, right? That gives me the coordinate of 0, 1. What do we know about the coordinates? How are they represented by sine and cosine? X is cosine, y is sine, right? So what is secant the reciprocal of? Is it the reciprocal of cosine or sine? Cosine. So looking at this chart, cosine of 90 is 0, correct? What's the reciprocal of 0? Can you put 0 in the denominator in math? So it's undefined because you can't have 0 in the denominator. To take the reciprocal of something is to put it in the denominator, right? 1 over it, okay? So for that reason, the reciprocal is going to be undefined. So in any case where you have 0, which are called the quadrantal angles, The reciprocal of any of those are always going to be zero, undefined. And if you were to do some of them in the calculator, well, this one you can't, but some of the other ones, they're going to come out to be undefined. And if you're wondering where I'm getting these values from, these are straight from the unit circle, okay? So like for this one, for example, sine of 7 pi over 6. 7 pi over 6 is right here. That's 210 degrees, right? Sine is x or y?
1/2.
1/2. Good. But it happens to be negative here because of what quadrant it's in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it have to be a fraction?
If you put 0.5, that's fine. Only ones you have to make sure are okay, because like, if you have like radical 3 over 2, you can't put like 0.866. Yeah. But those terminating decimals are fine.
So like just like half, like.
Those are fine. Yeah. Any